of the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs joins me now live from Jerusalem, also a former Israeli ambassador to the United Nations. Thank you for being with us. Let me start by asking you about Israel's plans here, because there's been talk, and we've heard it from several Israeli officials, the notion that a ground offensive is a possibility. How real is it?
Well, again, I wouldn't want to speculate about what are Israel's operational moves that could be used in the near future. But the main point to keep in mind is that all of Israel, particularly southern Israel, is now under attack by Hamas rockets. And it is the responsibility of the government of Israel to make sure that these attacks desist, that there be a halt. And we have signaled to the Palestinian leadership that we want these attacks to no longer continue, that the Palestinians should cease fire, but that doesn't happen. We're getting a clear-cut escalation. Last night we had 80 rockets fired at Israel, and today the rocket fire is intensified. It's now in the area of Jerusalem, which is supposed to be a holy city to Hamas. So, frankly, if the Palestinian leadership of Hamas does not halt the attacks against the Israeli civilians, against Israeli towns and villages, then Israel will have to do what's necessary to bring this fire to an end.
Okay, so what happens next then? I mean, if this is a long-term offensive, is this something that Israel is ready to engage in? Is there no other solution to de-escalate this crisis than through military airstrikes? Is there no other channel of communication open at this stage?
Well, first of all, Hamas, you have to understand, is not an organization that's involved in peacemaking. This is an organization that has been involved in terrorism. It's not only condemned as a terrorist group by the United States, the European Union, or Canada. Even Egypt, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates will have nothing to do with Hamas today, because they understand that Hamas condones violence. Look at the statements that their leaders make. Look at what they teach their children in their textbooks. So we're hoping that Hamas has the wisdom to protect the interests of Palestinians. But right now it seems they have only one interest and one interest alone: violence and the killing of Israelis. And if that's the case, Israel has every right under international law to protect itself from these attacks.
But we heard from you, and I've heard from other Israeli officials and former ambassadors and the like, that it's the Palestinian Authority, always blaming the Palestinian Authority for actions that you say are the actions of Hamas. Do you think the Palestinian Authority has that kind of influence over Hamas, that all it has to do is ask them to do something, and they will?
Well, first of all, Mahmoud Abbas made a terrible error, the head of the Palestinian Authority, by creating an alliance, a relationship with Hamas, a joint government, which he put in place, and basically made himself a hostage to Hamas. But he's responsible. He's responsible for this joint government, which now has to take responsibility for rocket attacks from Palestinian territory against Israel. By the way, these are war crimes. These are crimes against humanity by any definition of anyone who understands international law. We're hoping the entire international community condemns Hamas's attacks against Israeli civilians. But regardless,
but do you think the Palestinian Authority has that power?
Excuse me.
Because I have somebody from the Palestinian Authority who's going to be able to answer this question for me. Do you think the Palestinian Authority, in the case of the murder of the 3 young Israeli boys, in the case of rocket fire coming from Gaza, that the Palestinian Authority has influence over Hamas to the degree that it just asks for something and that something is granted by Hamas?
Well, you just ask any Palestinian leader from Ramallah, from the Palestinian Authority, from Fatah, if they condemn Hamas's attacks against Israeli civilians. They won't condemn it. They'll say something general about, we don't condone violence, and they'll try and say that Israel's self-defense operations are violence. That isn't serious. They have to reject violence. They have to break off from Hamas, and they have to support every effort to get Hamas to desist in this irresponsible and dangerous course of action that it has assumed.
All right, Dore Gold, thanks very much for joining us. A quick word from Mustafa Barghouti, because I